His hand trembled, just a millimeter, but it trembled, because at that exact second, Marcus understood something that you, watching this story, need to understand as well. If he remained invisible for one more day, his son would never know who he really was. And there would come a point, in weeks, perhaps months, where there would be no turning back, where Lucas would believe that his father was only what he saw every day, a man without depth, without history, without identity. Beyond the coffee grounds on the floor, he looked at the coffee cup on the ground, the hot liquid still steaming, forming a dark puddle that widened on the gray floor of Central Station. It wasn't the cup that scared him. It wasn't even the mess. It was the silence. That specific silence that only happened when someone recognized him, when his eyes met Marcus's for a fraction of a second, and then pretended it had never happened, as if he were transparent, as if he were just a mistake in movement, in space. He took a deep breath, letting the oxygen slowly, methodically fill his lungs. He picked up the shards with his bare hands, rough hands, dirty with the morning's sweat, with calluses that reminded him of other jobs in past lives, completely ignoring the gaze of the elegant woman who had bumped into him. She wore a suit that cost more than Marcus earned in 2 months. Her shoes were so polished that they reflected the glow of the fluorescent lights in the station. She had already passed by, wrapped up in her own pulsing urgency, her own world of importance and constant haste. Marcus did not exist in that universe. Only the mess he needed to clean up existed. Only the broken glass. Only the invisible work that kept the world running. Every day, the same thing. Every day, this was the life he had chosen, or that had chosen him. After a while, it became hard to distinguish the difference. It was 7 a.m. when Marcus left the 2-bedroom apartment in the forgotten neighborhood of the city's east side, a place that real estate agents referred to as underdevelopment, which was another way of saying that no one important lived there. The apartment itself was clean, extremely clean, the white walls without pictures, without any decoration that could tell a story, just the 2 beds, one for him, one for Lucas, his 8-year-old son, a moon-shaped lamp that Marcus had found in a discount store, books organized on a shelf he had built with his own hands 5 years ago, when he still had some hope that things could be different. The novels of Machado de Assis, the short stories of Carlos Drummond de Andrade, books that Marcos constantly reread, searching in their words for something that connected him to who he had been before. Marcus walked through the apartment's corridors in absolute silence. His steps were light, careful. He had learned to move without making noise. He had learned to occupy space without really being present in it. Lucas was still sleeping. His son, his only responsibility, his only reason for continuing to breathe, had the habit of sleeping deeply, as if recharging his entire soul, all his innocence, during those 8 hours. Marcus watched him from the doorframe, observing the boy's breath rising and falling. Lucas had dark hair like the night, an inheritance from a place Marcus preferred not to explore. His mouth was slightly open. He had that smile that belonged only to dreams, a smile that disappeared as soon as he woke up. Marcus didn't know what his son dreamed about. He had never asked. There were things that a fated father simply could not know. He took a deep breath and closed the door with absolute care, ensuring that he made no noise that could wake the boy. The routine began on the subway, always at the same time, always on the same line, always in the same car. Marcus grabbed the tool bag, old, worn, with stickers that no one recognized anymore, symbols of universities that hadn't protected him, cleaning marks that reminded him of where he had been before, and entered the first car in the morning. The subway was always crowded at that hour. Bodies against bodies, people in their own bubbles, connected to headphones, lost in phones that glowed like alternative lives. He sat in the same seat, always near the window, where he could observe his reflection as one observes a ghost, present, but without a body, there but already forgotten while being seen, cleaning. That was his job, the profession of dissolution. The cleaner was the machine that no one named, the hand that organized the scene so that others could be the center, existing without leaving a mark, being there without occupying a place in anyone's memory. He cleaned corporate buildings, the temples of money, spaces where men in suits that cost more than their rent and women in shoes that looked like art passed by Marcus's table like water flows over a stone. He collected their glasses, their crumpled papers, the crumbs of their conversations about growth and opportunities, words that never reached him. While they made phone calls, Marcus disappeared. While they planned empires, he evaporated. When they left, he left the table so clean that no one could remember anyone had been there to clean it. The Central Metropolis Station was where everything began. That glass and steel space that had been built 5 years ago, when Marcus still had a name in the world, when people called him by name and didn't just point to the trash on the floor. He entered the Sokolov Ventures building at 7:45 a.m. The security guard, a guy named Filippi, whom Marcus knew by his uniform, didn't even look up. Marcus passed through the metal detector with the already familiar, already expected tool bag. He took the elevator alone, floor 32. Morning cleaning. The office was vast, dozens of desks, dozens of computers, screens that shone like holograms in a future that Marcus would never have. He began his routine, sweeping, cleaning, emptying trash cans, organizing, wiping down surfaces with a lightly scented, lavender, artificial cloth where men and women had been just minutes ago, making decisions that moved billions. No one paid attention to him. No one even opened their eyes when Marcus passed by their desks. He went home at 11:30 a.m., the exact time. Then he picked up Lucas from school at 12:15 p.m. His son came down the school steps with that shy smile he had inherited from him, Marcus, but which shone with an innocence that the father had long lost. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, boss." That was their greeting, always the same. Lucas took his hand, a rough hand, with calluses, with small cleaning wounds, and they walked home. He cooked, always rice, beans, chicken, nothing sophisticated, nothing that required more than a pot and fire. Then they did homework together. Marcus helped with math. He had always been good with numbers. Very good. But no one knew that. At night, he would tuck Lucas in and tell a story. The same story, slightly altered each night. A story about a boy who had invisible power, the power to see what no one else could see, the power to understand when someone was sad, even if they were smiling. "Dad, why don't you want to work in a better place?" Lucas asked that once. Just once. Marcus didn't answer. He kissed his son's forehead and turned off the moon-shaped lamp. Because what was the point? Because Marcus had studied at a university that no one recognized anymore, a third-rate university in a second-tier city, but it had still taught him more than he would ever need. Because he had worked in a place where money was so fast it literally burned his fingers. Because he had made a decision, a single decision that had destroyed everything. He had reported the theft, large-scale fraud, billions disappearing in accounting gaps that no one noticed except Marcus. The numbers screamed at him when he looked at the spreadsheets. There were patterns that didn't add up, transfers that went unexplained. He had been the senior data analyst, the man who understood numbers better than he understood people. He had been seen back then. He had mattered. His name had appeared in important documents. He had been mentioned in meetings. He had been real until he reported it, until doing the right thing and realizing that the right thing had a price that most people were not willing to pay. The company had disappeared in 6 months, not gradually, but in a sudden collapse of federal audits and arrests, its partners too, to federal prisons, to distant countries without extradition treaties, to the corporate oblivion that was perhaps worse than any prison. But Marcus had been marked. No company would hire him. Human resources agencies rejected him. There was something about his name, something toxic, difficult, some said, complicated, others said, that causes problems. It was as if he had committed a crime by trying to prevent one. So he had deliberately embraced invisibility. He had offered himself to it like a monk offers himself to silence. It was safer that way. It was better for Lucas, his son who had been born during all this turmoil, who had never known his father as a man of importance. It was better for everyone. Routine was structure. Routine was protection. Until it started. It was a Tuesday. The exact day doesn't matter, but it was a Tuesday, when someone interrupted him. Marcus was on the 32nd floor of Sokolov Ventures, wiping down the conference table when a woman walked in. She was not an employee. Marcus knew this by the way she carried her bag. It was not a work bag. It was a travel bag. And there was something in her eyes, a precision, an intelligence that cut. "You there," she said. She didn't point, nor did she look to the side. She looked straight ahead, fixed, like someone who had learned to see through the layers of air where people hid. Marcus froze. His heart raced in pure panic. Being seen, truly seen, was the risk he had spent 8 years avoiding. It was worse than any threat. It was exposure. "Yes," he said, and the word came out fragile, as if it might break in the air. "How long have you worked here?" 8 years, he replied flatly. 8 years in which he had learned to disappear so completely that even his voice had lost color. "You cleaned the tables." It was not a question. It was an accusation. "Yes." She moved closer. Her movement was predatory in the way she occupied space. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, with a confidence that came from having won and lost empires. Her eyes had the quality of someone who had learned to see beyond what people wanted to reveal. "What is your name?" No one had called him that in so long. His name had become a language that no one spoke anymore. "Marcus! Marcus!" she repeated, each syllable careful. "You've seen something here, something that shouldn't be happening, and you pretended not to see because invisibility became safer than the truth." Marcus felt the world tilt. His breath became shallow. This woman was dangerous not because she was violent, but because she had seen through the mask he had worn for 8 years, because she wouldn't let him disappear again. And there, in that moment, Marcus understood the true dilemma. Opening his mouth meant total exposure. It meant risk. But remaining silent meant that one day Lucas would ask, "Who are you, Dad?" And Marcus would have no answer. It meant losing his son while still breathing beside him. "No," he replied, the lie coming out almost inaudibly. "I didn't see anything." "You are lying," said Carla, with the certainty of someone who had learned to read numbers and souls. "And do you know why? Because you see everything. Because seeing is the only way for you to survive in a world that wants you to disappear." Marcus did not respond. He continued wiping the cloth, but his hands trembled. The pressure of being unmasked was almost unbearable. "My name is Carla Sokolov," she said. "I am the owner of this company. And you, Marcus, you are the ghost who sees everything." He froze again. "Your colleagues told me about you, about the way you look at the tables, at the papers, at the screens when no one is watching. I wanted to meet you, because someone who has worked here for 8 years and remains so invisible. Well, that person is either too stupid to matter or too smart to be seen." Marcus turned to her. Their eyes met. For the first time in 8 years, someone truly saw him. "What do you want?" he asked. I want to know what you saw." The silence of that moment was absolute. Even the air in the room seemed to have stopped moving. Marcus thought of Lucas. He thought of the routine. He thought about how everything had started with a brave no and had ended with a life of erasure. He thought about how he had chosen safety over truth. "There are discrepancies," he finally said. "In the third quarter, accounting. Gaps of $47 million in internal transfers. The pattern is identical to 2018, but the source is different. This time it comes from within. It's someone in the finance department, someone with access to dual validation systems." Carla Sokolov watched him for a long moment. Then she nodded, as if she had confirmed something she had long suspected. "How much would you earn if you helped me recover that money?" she asked. "I don't need money," Marcus said. "Everyone needs it," she replied. But she was wrong. Marcus didn't need money. He needed invisibility, or so he thought. He needed security. He needed to be left alone to raise his son without being judged. The reward that Carla Sokolov offered, a sum too high to refuse, low enough to seem fair, did not impress him at first. What really impressed him was when she contacted the federal police, with government auditors, when his name finally appeared in a public document, his real name, his full name. Marcus Delgado was absolutely crucial in identifying the fraud. Lucas read aloud, his little finger pointing to the newspaper he had found stuck in the front door. "Dad, you appeared in the newspaper. You're famous." Marcus felt the weight of that moment. He felt the invisibility being literally ripped from him like the bark from a tree. Lucas hugged him tightly, and for the first time in 8 years, Marcus saw something completely new shining in his son's eyes. It was not just love. It was admiration. It was pride. "You are a hero, Dad. You are a real hero." Things changed very quickly after that. Carla Sokolov formally hired Marcus, not as a cleaner, not as invisible, but as a senior corporate security analyst. A real title, a real position. The salary was comfortable. The office had windows that overlooked the entire city. The desk was large, made of genuine wood. His name was engraved on a plaque hanging from the door. But Marcus brought something important to that desk. A small photo of Lucas, his favorite photo, placed where he could always see it. And in the corner, almost hidden, he kept the old toolbox. Not because he had to go back to being a cleaner, but as a reminder, as humility, as honor to the man he had to be to survive. Lucas started doing much better in school. There was a new confidence in his step when he went out for recess. There was new pride in his smile. The children who had previously ignored him now wanted to play with the son of the corporate fraud hero. But the most important thing happened 3 weeks later. Marcus was on the subway, heading home. He was now taking the subway at a different time because he got off work at a different time. There was no longer that fixed routine. There was movement. There was change. An old man entered the car. He was struggling, trying to find a place to sit. His eyes looked tired, empty, invisible. Marcus immediately stood up and offered his seat. The man looked at him, surprised, as if no one had done that for him in a long time. "Thank you," the man said, sitting down. Marcus stood, holding on to the pole of the car as it swayed with the movement of the subway. And he thought about how he had spent 8 years being invisible, how he had denied the truth to protect the illusion of safety. As he had almost let invisibility become permanent. Lucas was waiting for him at the door when he got home. The boy ran into his arms and Marcus lifted him up. His son was growing. Soon he wouldn't be so light anymore. And kissed him on the forehead. "Dad, did you see the email from school? My math project was chosen for the whole city's science fair." "I did," said Marcus. "And you know what? You have a knack for numbers, just like someone I know very well." Lucas smiled that smile that was half him, half his mother. "Are you coming to the presentation?" "I'll be in the front row," promised Marcus. "And I'll be very visible. I'll be so visible that everyone will know It's my son doing that amazing demonstration." That night Marcus cooked rice, beans, and chicken. The same old thing. But this time, while they ate at the small wooden table he had built with his own hands, he told Lucas a different story. The true story. The complete story. "You know, my son," Marcus began, cutting his chicken into small pieces, "when you were very little, I was different. I worked in a big place full of important people. I looked at numbers, very big numbers, and found things that other people couldn't see." Lucas watched him with that absolute focus that only children can have. His eyes didn't stray. His eyes said he had been waiting for this story for a long time. "And one day I saw something bad. Someone was stealing billions of reais, and I found out. I reported it." "Were you a hero?" Lucas asked, simply and directly, the way only children can. "I was. But after I reported it, no one wanted to hire me. They said I was dangerous, complicated. It caused problems. And then I decided that being invisible was better, that protecting you was more important than being seen, that safety came from silence." Lucas slowly put down the fork. His eyes were misty with tears that had not yet fallen. "Dad, I would rather have a visible father than a hidden one, even if it's scary." Those words simply broke Marcus, literally shattered like glass, that finally gives way after years and years of pressure. He had raised a son who preferred the truth to comfort, a son who understood that invisibility was just another kind of death. "You taught me something very important, my son," Marcus continued, wiping his own eyes with the back of his rough hand. "You taught me that there is no true safety in invisibility. There is no truth in forced silence. True safety comes from the truth. It comes from being here, really here, present, seen, known." Lucas got up and hugged his father. A child's hug, but it carried a maturity that shouldn't exist in an 8-year-old boy. The hug of a child who had grown up feeling the absence of his father, not a physical absence, but an absence of authentic presence, from a father who had voluntarily faded away. Lucas slept that night with his hand in his father's hand, as they used to, but this time the silence between them wasn't fear, it was peace. Marcus stayed awake for a while, looking at the face of his sleeping son. And for the first time in 8 years, he saw himself, not as an invisible cleaner, wiping down the tables of powerful men, not as someone marked by the past, doomed to disappear. He saw himself as a father, a man who had done the right thing, a man who had finally stopped running and started living. In the morning when Lucas woke up, Marcus was already up making coffee. But this time, he had put up the family photo, the one he had kept in a box for 8 years, that old photo taken before the collapse, before the invisibility, framed on the kitchen wall. It was a simple photo, nothing extravagant, but it was visible, it was public, it was a silent statement that he had finally left the shadow. Lucas saw it as soon as he entered the kitchen. His eyes sparkled. He ran to hug his father again. "We look good in this photo," he said, pointing at the image. "We do," Marcus agreed. "And you know what? We're going to look even better, because now we have new photos to take. Photos of a father and son who are truly together." And he knew that everything had changed in that moment when Carla Sokolov saw him in an empty room and refused to let him return to silence, when she interrupted his routine of erasure and forced him to find the courage he had buried along with his name, because the silence he had chosen as protection was now turning into peace. The invisibility that had kept him half alive was now disappearing forever, and he finally understood being seen was not weakness. Being seen, being truly known, was the only true way to be alive. Marcus was still working. He still had responsibilities, bills to pay, routines to fulfill. But now, when he passed through the subway in the morning, people saw him. Some recognized his name from the newspapers. Are you that data analyst? The one who uncovered the fraud? And for the first time in 8 years, Marcus not only answered yes. He lifted his head. He existed. He was seen. Life would never be the same again. And this time, being seen, being known, was not just a good thing. It was everything.